Good morning, everyone. How are you doing today? Good? Awesome. Actually, super happy to be here today. After 2 years of online conference, of being behind my computer, holding talk, having no laugh at my jokes because I couldn't really see the reaction of people, I'm really glad to be here. And the irony is that during 2 years, we were craving social contact. We were craving physical connections. You know, we all wanted to be on the terrace, sipping a glass of wine, looking at people, playing sport outside, you know, getting together in a bar. And yet, today, I will explain you how to get rid of all of that, you know, how to dive into a world where you don't need any physical connections, when you don't need anyone real. So how exciting that after 2 years of deprivation, I show you how to, you know, continue this scenario. So over the next half an hour, we'll explore a bit together. First of all, what is a metaverse? Because there are no Oxford dictionary explaining what the metaverse, so it's good to put a bit some context and have a common definition. Then we'll explore what will be the role of us creators. What can we do in these new worlds? I will give you some hints on how to become metaverse ready. And last but not least, I will show you that unfortunately there are some risks and some pitfalls dealing with this new universe. So you may have noticed I have a slight accent. I am actually from France. My name is Guillaume. I am the founder and lead designer at Eno Studio, which is a product consultancy based in Kreuzberg, in Berlin, sorry. And yeah, basically we design any kind of product for any kind of support. And fun fact, back in 2012, I created a game studio called Illusion, and we were creating among the first augmented reality games in Europe. And we raised a lot of money. We lost a lot of money as well. But the idea was basically to create a virtual world on top of our reality. So we're relying on mapping technology. We're dealing with Google Maps, with Open Maps, and all this kind of maps. And we build on top of that a virtual universe, so you could claim property in our real world. So you could claim the Fernsehturm or the London, or in London a piece of land, and you could visualize these new worlds through the lens of your camera. So already 10 years ago, we were already talking about augmented reality, about virtual world, about overlay. So then you ask me, like, is this metaverse idea really new if we're already talking about that for freaking 15 years? Well, that's why it's important to put some context here, and I would like us to agree on one definition, at least until the end of the keynote. Then you can change it if you want. So in my eyes, the difference between the web that we have right now and the metaverse is that it will be an experience which is much more immersive and much more social. So that's the two keywords that I will use today. How to make our web more immersive, more social, in order to create this metaverse. And in order to do that, you need to rely on some technology. And I think it's important also to do some definition groundwork. Today, we all know we are living in a Web 2.0, which is an extremely social internet with the rise and maybe fall of social networks such as Facebook, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and all these kind of things, where it's all about getting people connected through platform, but also user-generated content. So that's basically the Web 2.0. If you were attending the webinar 1988, I'm pretty sure you heard about that. Well, you take that layer, and on top of that, you add some other components, such as virtual, augmented, or mixed reality. You add some blockchain components. We mentioned Web3. I think, in general, the idea of decentralized technology is a key factor of this. And last but not least, what people tend to forget, you need high-speed internet. You can't navigate a metaverse if you're like on edge, you know, every time you try to load something, it takes ages. And that, I think, that's the main difference, by the way, with the technology and the platform we used to build 10 years ago. Now you have the possibility to have extremely fast internet everywhere in the world and to render stuff in real time. So That's the definition. Metaverse is a more social, more immersive world thanks to these kind of ground layers. And if you ask me, like, okay, but how does it look like concretely? I'm not going to dive into all the existing metaverse from Roblox, from Epic, from Mesh, from Microsoft. There are like 1,000 out there. I will actually show you an old example, a vintage video from 2016 that was made by a Japanese guy called Matsuda. And it's actually available on YouTube. It's a movie called Hyper Reality. It's basically a render of how the world could look like if we're really diving into the metaverse. So you can see the truly immersive experience with this juxtaposition of an overlay or layers on top of our real world. You have a social experience because you can rate people in the streets, you know, like Black Mirror kind of things. You can interact with physical as virtual world. So I mean, obviously it's scary because we're already getting spam online, and here you will have a kind of nightmare experience, but it gives you at least, you know, an idea where we could move on. On purpose, I didn't take an example from the gaming industry because I don't want people to think that Metaverse is purely a gaming story. I mean, obviously, the current metaverses have strong tie in gaming. I don't know if you know Epic, Sandbox, and all that, these companies that are really deeply involved in the entertainment industry. But it's not only that. It's not only a fun, I mean, it should be fun, but it's not only a playful experience. And I want to point out that the metaverse is going to impact all the industry. So get rid of these ideas that, oh, metaverse is just like a gaming story for nerds. I don't have any business to do with that. Well, that's not true. That's actually utterly bullshit, because the metaverse is going to have impact in healthcare, in education, in fintech, in military, in industry. It's going to be basically influencing, I think, all industries in the world. And there are already some figures that back this idea. The city assess the potential of the metaverse to be between 8 and 13 trillion economy by 2030. So there's some cash to do there. That's a bit the ground, right? So the question is, like, what will be the role of creators, of us, tech people, in the metaverse? Well, if I put it really simply, we will have to design an overlay on top of our physical world. That's really bland, I know. But I think the key information to understand is that metaverse is not something detached. You know, it's not like Second Life, you know, like having like these weird-looking dudes in the closed environments. Here it's all about connecting our real physical world to this virtual world. But that's not enough. We also have, as the creator, to create meaningful connections between, as I said, the analog and the virtual world, but also between people. I think you already heard about these examples, you know, from physical to virtual. You had Ariana Grande, who played a concert, I think last year on Fortnite, and the whole thing was packed. I think the server like freaking collapsed, and she actually pulled the whole show on this like gaming platform. On the other hand, you also have like Nike starting to do NFTs and like create virtual sneakers that have so much success in a NFT world that they start to to produce actually the shoes in real life. So I think, you know, the key here is like the connection that you build between the worlds, but also between people. Again, immersive and social. Let's get a bit deeper and deeper in this discussion. So when we speak about designing immersive experiences, you heard me speaking about augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, 3D, you know, like 3D renders on the browser. Obviously, it's a lot about spatial design. And I think that's one of the key things that creators will have to adapt. We're going to move from a bi-dimensional mindset to a multi-dimensional mindset. And that's actually really important. And that starts already with a really basic application, such as IoT. If you want to switch off, you know, the light in your living room or in your digital house, it will be a 3D interaction. It will be a spatial interaction. You know, you will either physically move there, or you will actually maybe look at your hand, change the color of the light bulb on a wheel color. But it can also go to much more deeper products, such as therapeutic or like psychological and cognitive education. So they have, for example, here a classroom especially designed for kids suffering from autism. And obviously here you also heavily rely on this idea of spatial design, or having not a bidimensional interface, but something obviously much more 3D driven. That's for the immersive part. Then I mentioned the social connection, and it actually started to happen. I don't know if you know all the hype around indoor equipment. I'm not going to make any advertising for this company, but I think over the last 2 years, we all seen this advertising of this dude like bicycling in their apartments. Obviously, when you can go out of your apartment, that seems like a good idea. You know, you are in front of your screen and you can escape. You know, you are sitting in, I don't know, like in Mannheim, and then you can bicycle on the road of Mallorca. You know, that's definitely appealing. And on top of that, you can make friends. You know, you can meet your lovers in this bicycle trip. So it's quite interesting. But you know what's really fun is that the connection, the social connection, was much more than only networking. I don't know if you bicycle already in your life, I hope so, but if you bike behind a car or behind another bicycle rider, you will benefit from what we call the wind drag. So you actually go faster if you are behind this moving object. And actually they replicated this phenomenon in this world. So meaning being with someone else had a true benefits, because you could benefit from being behind this person. So the social connection here is not only a networking purpose, it also have a real advantage. You know, being with someone, you actually benefit from this embodiment, from this other physical person. And I think that the second task as a creator will do is to think how to take advantage of the social connection, how to go a step further, not only let's meet because we want to be friends, but actually let's meet to do something together, to build something together. And that's, in my eyes, you know, the second big pillar of creating in a metaverse. The third one will be to have working technology. Up. So how are you today? That will never happen in the metaverse. So I told you a bit what will be the to-dos of creators. Now, how can we be ready? How can we be ready to actually do something? Because, you know, theory is not everything. Well, our first task as creators will be to create a familiar environment. You don't want to overwhelm people with technology, with new concepts. You know, that's why when we design for blockchain customers, we never mention the idea of blockchain, because nobody gives a damn about the technology. People want to have a seamless experience. And that has to be the same with the metaverse. We should never mention the word metaverse. You know, the user just needs to thrive and to enjoy using the experience. And the first step, again, that's my own take, was to create something people are familiar with. And that's what we call the Jacob's law in design. You know, like people transfer what they know to something which is familiar. You know, like I see a glass of wine, I know, okay, if I pour that in my mind, I will have a great time. And that's basically, you know, the whole principle behind. When we were kids, we used to, not only kids, but if you have a TV at home with a remote control, we all know for generation that when you click on this red button, like a half circle, it will switch off the TV. And that's something that was taken in a web. When you click on this button, you expect the application to switch off. You expect the application to log out. And that's basically exactly what we are going to have to do. Take some objects, some component people are familiar with, and transfer it in the metaverse so that people feel familiar, feel that at home. You know, it's not like learning a new technology. It's not about starting from scratch. We have to facilitate this onboarding. And that's basically what Apple did. At the really beginning of iOS, with iOS 1, they work a lot with what we call skeuomorphism. So basically trying to make the digital interface as similar as possible as our real world. You know, for pictures, they use a real glossy picture of flowers. And then over the years, you know, it became like, I don't know, it's super abstract. You know, it looks like a diagram of Venn. It has nothing to do with an album. Because what happened is the user evolved with the technology, and we know at a point when we don't need to be taken by the end because we know how to use a digital interface. And yet, we should take full advantage of this technology. We just can't put the keyboard on a 3D, you know, like environment and just say like type your name. You know, it's not how it works. You know, we have a huge potential dealing with the metaverse, and we should obviously do the best out of it. And a concrete example is how to navigate an application, how to navigate the world. I think that people haven't really fully understood yet, but we can. I don't know if you're familiar with a game called GTA. So it's basically a game that started as a 2D game, GT2, when you were actually controlling a character from top, and then we moved to a third-person views. And I think that's super interesting in terms of navigation pattern, because dealing with different situations, you could have either a bird view, a point of view perspective, or a third-person perspective. And that's something that can be heavily exploited in terms of navigation and UI in general. Also, you could create virtual space to better structure the content. You know, web page, right now you click there, you click there, you click there, it doesn't really make sense. Now in the future, you could have, well, let's take an example of Netflix, for instance. And we could actually create a cinema like Netflix. Understand the irony. When you have like one room, when you have all the movies, the Hollywood blockbusters, another one, when you go physically, you will have all the comedy. Netflix is a nightmare to navigate right now. You don't understand how the algorithm is working. The video are playing every time you click on something. So Netflix could, instance, really benefit from a new navigation pattern. And I believe by structuring the rooms, you could gain advantage of it. And other things, obviously, the interactions. You know, we're already using our smartphone, extremely influenced by the haptics. You can like swipe left or right, depending on. Yeah, you can like pinch to zoom. You can like, you know, we already use a bit of that, but now it's going to be even bigger. You know, it will be like, yeah, I mean, like much more interesting. Let's say you want to dig into your topic. I don't know. You can just like physically go there. You know, there's so much things to do. You can move your body. You can actually take advantage of our real world interaction and transfer them in this metaverse. And also, what I believe is quite important is the feedbacks you get. You know, let's say you want to try some clothes. Obviously, you could get a direct renders of how that will look on you. If you want to try a new diet, I don't know. If you want to get a new color, like hair color, you could get these direct feedbacks on your personality, on your embodiments. And I think that has actually quite a potential in terms of design and product experience. And the last point I really want to mention should take advantage of is spatial audio, because right now, we consume only music when we listen to, well, music, or when we are watching movies or videos on social networks. But I believe that in a more immersive environment, we could really take much more advantage of audio. So like, it could have a true functionality, such as, I don't know, if I'm going in the wrong direction, I could get like audio feedbacks, or yeah, I could assess the distance better if I get some wave of music or like some volume feedback. So here I do think that's actually a huge potential, which is truly untapped at the moment when people are designing for the metaverse. So that was the pink utopic version of the metaverse. Obviously, there are some risk, there are some pitfalls, and I do believe it's our role as a future creators of the metaverse to really address that. First of all, I do believe, knowing a bit the tech company out there, they are not super open-minded in sharing, their properties, and there will be huge hassle in designing from one platform to another. You're pretty familiar with the concept of responsive design, like creating responsive apps for different screen size. It's already a hassle, right, to deal with Android, Apple, or like desktop screens. Just imagine having to design all of that, but on different metaverse. All the assets that you create for one world, you will have to transfer them for another world. And I think that's where going to be quite interesting for us in how to make sure that we can export your belongings, your assets from one world to another. And that's something that I believe we will have to monitor from really close. Another point is that since the metaverse is so immersive, just imagine the impact it will have, especially for young minds. Everything connected to cyberbullying, to harassment, to body negativity. We have to think about that already when designing for that, because the impacts of an insult, the impacts of a negative message will be so much deeper than on a screen. Just imagine you are like in a physical room and all of you start to laugh at me and throw stuff at me. The impacts will be much bigger than if I'm just reading a Facebook message, right? So that's something we need to build like safety guards in order to make sure that nobody will be excluded, nobody will be harassed, or you know already how complex this topic is, but I think the metaverse is going to be even more crucial. Ethical failure. It's funny. I was beginning of the year at South by Southwest, and I don't know if you're familiar with this guy, but he basically spoke about the future of Meta and what will be the metaverse according to Mark Zuckerberg. And the fun fact is, not one single time did he mention any of the failure of Facebook. He didn't mention the fake news. He didn't mention the manipulation of data. He just spoke about NFT on Instagram. And actually, this guy is this company is one of the companies that really hit rock bottom with all this, with all these scandals, and yet they are not thinking nor addressing this issue in the metaverse. And just imagine how much more data we will have available. If you wear a headset, you will have, your height, you will have a scanning of your environment, you will have so many measures, and yet there's not one single sentence that was discussed during the unveiling of the Meta. That's a little bit scary. And last but not least, it's a topic which is quite close to me, is the idea of accessibility. I don't know if you're aware, but I would say 90% of the web is not accessible for people with visual impairments, for people that are non-binary. There's already a lot of work to be done to make it as universal as possible. So now we're actually opening a new, a layer where we will have to, have even more challenges. Just think about the physical disabilities when you have to navigate through a headset or through through the equipment. There's definitely something we have to take into account. Also, people. Colorblind people, we have to review the whole texture, the whole landscape. There's a tremendous work to be done in order to make it as open as possible. I'm not even talking about the technology gap. I would say at least half of the population doesn't own smartphone as of today. Now we're building another world when you have to rely on really heavy technology in order to browse, the metaverse. So I do believe that we'll have to come up with alternatives in order to make it accessible one way or another, maybe through a browser, maybe through a low rendering polygons counts, in order to make sure that everyone can actually access this world. Unless, just imagine, in order to get a credit in a real world, you have to get a mortgage on your virtual property. If you don't have access to this virtual property, well, you can't. Just an example, obviously, but you see, I do believe if we start to create this new world, we have to make sure everyone is involved from the start. So I spoke a bit longer than expected. I hope you could take a few takeaways today. One of the most important, I believe, as creators, is to consider the Jacob's law. Try to onboard as softly as possible the users by using things that they already know. Secondly, keep in mind that we are moving from a bidimensional mindset in order to a more spatial experiences. And last but not least, I would like already to sensitivize you on the fact that it's also our responsibility to deal with pitfalls and risk of the ethical biases that we may have from the Web 2.0. Thank you so much for your time. I wish you wonderful sessions today. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you very much, Guillaume, for this really great opening keynote. And I really like the way how you, on the one hand, gave us, let's say, showed us a little kind of a path, but on the other hand, showing us, of course, the responsibility which everybody of us really has in that field. Maybe one question from my side, because you said, okay, one should build on, let's say, familiar metaverse, right? But to which degree should we, let's say, duplicate the world which is already there? And to which degree should already, of course, digital experience represent something slightly different? Mm-hmm. An example, I remember in the 1990s, I don't know if somebody else remembers, but one was talking about the future of e-commerce. And then they started to build virtual shopping malls. Yeah, this is the future of e-commerce. But guess what? What happens? Amazon came and it looked totally different, right? Yeah. So to which degree should we rely on the existing stuff, and to which degree maybe it does not even make sense?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, there's definitely not one single answer. But first of all, it's really depending on the use case. So I mean, you spoke about e-commerce. So let's stick to this one. I think the mistake that the people did in the 90s is tries to replicate 101. Yeah. Instead of really taking advantage of the potential. I mean, if you look a bit, there are some, especially in the NFT world, a lot of fashion providers that have collaboration with real world fashion, and they move away from this truly clothes that we have, because we have like avatars, we have the potential to actually explore and really let our creativity go free. And I think that for this specific e-commerce, if you want to sell digital goods like that will remain virtual, you shouldn't replicate our world. On the other hand, if you want to sell like the shoes that you can actually buy in a shop, that's here, you have to rely on like a carbon copy of what you're going to sell. Yeah. But what is really important is how to access that. And I think, I mean, I don't know if you already noticed, but some of the applications that we have today, they are not, they can't be used by any generation. I mean, like already all this social network, when you have to swipe left, right to open some functionality, is already kind of tricky to understand for some people. Yeah. And I do think that that will be where we'll have to be a bit careful to build interactions that people feel as natural and not so like buying something. I do believe that handing your card and getting a product is a natural transaction to have in the e-commerce. That's something we could reuse. Mm-hmm. But if you have to go, I don't know, like click, tap here, there, and like swipe on the left, to get your product, you will lose half of your audience. Yeah. And then I think you should, it's a fine line between the new and the known. And there's no single answer to that.
Cool. Thank you so much. I think lots of stuff to think about and to talk about. And having said that, thanks again to you.
Thank you.
And thanks for you being here, and enjoy the conference day, and see you later for the upcoming keynotes. Bye-bye.